Hello and welcome to the channel. And for today's video, we are going to check out this custom Spawn from McFarlane Toys.
What would you do if at the moment of death, a voice from the darkness offered you the chance to live again? Have your answer? There's no time to think about it. Your heartbeat away from flatlining. Quick, what's the answer? I'm Todd McFarlane, and I created Spawn. I hope you'll consider the question I've just posed, because a man named Al Simmons didn't. When the question got popped on him, he signed like some stupid rookie in blood. See, Al had qualities he didn't even know he had, a special kind of wiring that Malbosia the devil looks for. And when he said yes to that voice, he signed on for a whole lot more than he ever bargained for. So before you find yourself in a similar situation, and a voice calls to you in the darkness, think of Al. Or as you may see, you'll have all eternity to think about your mistake too. And now Spawn, so turn off your lights.
So, this figure is inspired by the original look of Spawn as he was presented to us in the comics back in 1992. Spawn was a character that McFarlane had created as a teenager, I believe. He had an idea for this character that he developed for, I believe, a high school, or I believe it was his high school or college newspaper. I forget what it was. Or, for self-entertainment. But I believe it was around high school years, maybe early college, I forget. But anyway, he developed and created this character that would later on become the Spawn that we know that he released back in, like I said, 1992, when he split from Marvel Comics to help form Image. Now, for a long, then McFarlane released McFarlane Toys was then known when he first initially released the company as Todd's Toys. But I believe, there was some sort of lawsuit with another toy or another, I believe there was another toy that was named Todd or something that was conflicting, and Todd, part of it, long history of being sued for something, he then decided to just change the name of the company to McFarlane Toys. But of course, that's when he launched the Spawn toy line, and he, started to create his toy empire. So around the early to mid 2000s, I believe he started to slow down a little bit with the Spawn figures, and then recently with when the comic hit number 300, and then that led into the Kickstarter for the release of a new Spawn, and then what we have currently, you could call it a soft reboot or relaunch of the Spawn toy line. But through all of this, what I'm trying to say is, since that original Spawn that released, in 1994, I'm referring to the toy, and except for the Kickstarter that released around 2020, those have been the only iterations that we've had in toy form, action figure form, I should say, of the original Spawn in his original suit. So Spawn, for the original costume or suit, however you want to call it, like I said, so it debuted in the first issue of Spawn, and it lasted for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, depending on his release schedule. But around issue 32, I believe, is when Todd then changed up the costume and introduced the suit with which most are familiar with now, with the big boot and the large gauntlet for a glove and all of that. And throughout the history, like I said, almost exclusively from that issue through the present time, that was Spawn's costume. But I never was fond of that look. I actually did like the original costume that Todd designed for the character. Even if he had only just added the large gauntlet to his arm, that would have been fine. But the big boot just looks ridiculous to me. I mean, if you're a fan of the big boot, I'm sorry, but I just don't understand the purpose of the boot other than, I guess, it's just to use it as a weapon, when kicking somebody's face in. But as far as from what I remember, because I stopped reading Spawn around issue 18 or 19 after Todd left and stopped doing artwork, and Capullo took over. That's when I stopped reading Spawn. But I believe what the idea is behind the costume is that it almost like the Venom suit, that it's like a symbiote. So at some point, that's when the costume, I believe that almost like as a defense mechanism or something or other during that issue 32, 33. That's when the costume like evolved into to that modern look. And but I still was more of a fan of the original look. And so far, that's what has been missing from this, like I said, soft relaunch of the of the Spawn toy line. He's given us a bunch of different iterations, but they've all featured in some way or another the modern Spawn, right? And we have been lacking in this vintage OG Spawn costume. And that's what prompted me to come up with this custom. So I'm going to be posting some images throughout the video, but there's going to be a graphic that I'm going to be putting up where I highlight what it is that I took from each of the figures that I used to kitbash and make this custom. So primarily, the one key figure that is needed to make this custom, this particular custom, but if you want to make your own vintage Spawn, there are ways that you can accomplish it. Other ways, but it takes a little more work, because you have to, if you're going to use some of the Spawns that have been released either through the Spawn line or through the Mortal Kombat line, they're all going to come with the big boot. And that's the sticking point here. So you're going to need a version of Spawn that doesn't have the big boot. And the only version that has been released without a boot is the Shadow of Spawn figure. But that figure more or less has a smooth finish on the figure has a smooth finish. In other words, as you can see, Spawn has a textured look to the costume right now. That's how he has been depicted in pretty much since the movie, the 97, 98 movie. They've given the costume a little more texture to it, and it stopped being a completely smooth look. like a traditional superhero costume, right? So that's that Shadow of Spawn figure is a good candidate, but again, you would need something. Todd would need to release another version of that figure without the gauntlet on the arm. Again, you could probably remove the gauntlet and sculpt in to fill in the part, where the gauntlet is attached to and all of that. And I did some minor sculpting here, and I will show that when I'm close up on the figure. So what I was saying is, for this particular custom, and to make life more easier, well, depends if you can find one, the Spawn from the Batman Spawn 2-pack, which is the same figure that was released in the Throne Spawn, except the version that comes with the 2-pack has a full cape, and the version that came with the Throne is only the upper part of the cape, so that he would be able to sit down on the throne and look like he has the cape on, but it's only just a partial cape. Not even a partial cape, it almost looks like shoulder pads, right? So that's one part of the formula here, of the recipe. And the second figure that you're gonna need mainly just for one main piece, and that's the recently released Call of Duty Spawn, the one that looks less like a commando, right? The one that looks more like a classic Spawn, which comes with a cloth cape. So you're gonna be seeing this graphic that I'm putting up, where what are the parts that I took from each one of the figures to make this custom. Of course, the other thing that you're seeing that I did is I added the actual metal chains, those you can find in your craft store. I decided to go with different size chains for the ones that hang on the on his for like his belt, and the ones that hang on the cape. I decided to go smaller on the ones that are from the cape, and a slightly larger ones for the ones that are hanging on the belt. The paint that I used is a duplicate color paint. I didn't intend it for it to look like it does. You can see, because of the light that's coming through, it almost looks shiny, but it actually does have a matte finish on top. Excuse me. But the paint that I used is a duplicate color paint for a. Let me see. Okay, so the paint that I used for the blue is this duplicate color paint, perfect match, and the color that I used is the let's get this to focus, royal blue. You can see the code right there. Now, when applying this paint, even though it doesn't say here, but it does have like a slight metallic finish to it. And at first, when I applied it, I was like, "Oh, it looks kind of cool," my plan wasn't really to have a metallic finish for the costume, right? But I'm not saying it has an intense metallic look; it's just a slight metallic look, So, but after I applied the matte clear over the paint, it has dulled it down to where it just looks almost like a good intense blue color. Now, why did I go with blue instead of black? Simple. That's how the costume looked in the comics. Again, for most, you could say that it's just tricks of the lighting, because at some points the costume, whenever they would color the costume, at some points it would reflect like a gray, and other times again it would reflect a blue. So consistency was not there. But for the most part, the costume was depicted originally as being like a dark blue. And my original purpose for this I'm saying costume and costume, and it's a bit confusing. It's a tongue twister. But anyway, the original idea for this custom was to give it a black wash to dull down the blue. But when like I said, after I applied the clear on the matte finish on top, I like the way how it looks, and plus I don't really need to apply the black wash, because in certain spots, whether you place the figure in certain lighting, if it's too dark, right, the blue does go into a deep blue that almost looks like a black, and when light hits it, it does reflect blue. So in other words, it is accomplishing the look of the comic. The red is a leftover paint from one of my other customs. I believe it's called. I believe it was the cardinal red, but I did end up still overlaying a different red on top, because I still thought it was a little. I just wanted a little more vibrant, so I applied the red. What is it? The Angelus fire red or something like that on top, and lightly, so it almost blended with the cardinal red from the duplicate color paint that I applied. So it's like a mix of both. So yeah, that's pretty much the skulls I have. I only painted right now with Sharpie, and you'll see that some of the paint rubs off. You're gonna see some of the paint rub off for particularly the skulls there on the neck, and I did slightly smear some on top of the cape, but that I can just always cover that up. But now we're gonna have to give you a closer look of the custom costume. And I'll just show you what else that I did on this figure. Okay, so it's going to be easier if I'm going to show you the figure if I remove the cape. The cape is removable. I'll show you how I have it attached. Just simply remove the cape here. So what I did is I took I used some push pins. So I used some push pins. I broke off the plastic end of it, and when you break off the plastic end, it almost looks like a screw. It has a flat head on one end, and I used that end to glue underneath the skulls. So the flat head is through the cape, right? It's through the cape and underneath, and placed underneath the skull. Okay, so that's how the cape is being held in, as well as the chains. Although the chains do have some glue, so that they won't slip off, right? But that's how the cape gets secured. And I had to drill in holes through the clavicle right there. You can see the holes right there. Although after looking at it, it almost looks like the cape sits a little too back on Spawn. But I didn't want to go in too close into like the white area of the costume. So that's why I decided to drill in this area right here. So the other bit of the costume. So one of the things that I needed to do, one, so I did have to sculpt in to fill in the areas left from the bands from the arms that I used. So they leave in like some cavity, for which it's used to attach and glue in on that area. So I did have to sculpt in and fill in. You can see right there. There's like a remnant of right there. You can see like a light hitting the area. A remnant of where the bands were attached to. So I just used two piece of epoxy to sculpt that in. I believe it was it's the JB Weld, and then just as the epoxy was drying, with the X-Acto knife, I just did the texture lines like from the like on the costume. So I just added the texture lines to mimic the rest of the look of the costume. This looks a little bit better. You don't really see a lot of that remnant of the recess. You can see a better look of how I attached the uh, the chains on the belt skull. Uh, so that's a bendy wire that I just twisted around on one end, and it is attached from the back of the skull as well, similar to the ones for the cape. Now, one thing I did have to do for this when I applied the red paint, I did have to use a white base underneath because of the base color being or the color of the plastic being black. I did, like I said, I didn't want the red to be a little too dark, so and I wanted a little more vibrant red. So I use a white primer to base coat underneath the red, which helps for the white part of the costume. Although I did have to end up retouching the white with white acrylic markers. But I did apply a red base all over the parts that I painted red, so that the red would come out at the end a little more vibrant. For the backside of the costume, the good thing about this figure is that the white part at the lower end, on the lower back, those lines do come in sculpted in, so it gives you an idea of where to paint through. You can see some paint chipping right there. So that needs a retouch. But yeah, same deal. I attached the chains through using this bendy wire into the skull. And here you can see how that texture looks on the. You can see some paint chipped off right there. So yeah, I mean, for the most part, everything is sticking. There isn't no major chippage so far on the shoulders. You can see the face here, the mask. I'm just gonna have to repaint that area right there so it doesn't look so ugly. But yeah, this is pretty much the custom that I think most of us have been waiting for. Now, for this leg, what is it? His left side leg. You have options really when finishing the custom for, like, for instance, the Call of Duty Spawn does have only a high band, one high band around below, like the high calf area, which is sometimes a little more accurate to the original Spawn. Um, but the thing is, also you have to keep in mind to keep it a little more consistent, because that Call of Duty Spawn, even though it kind of uses the same mold, it does have like an extra bit of texturing on the costume, so you will have like some unsymmetrical look if you decide to use one leg from one figure and one leg from another. So that's why I decided to stick with this one leg that comes with the the 2-pack Spawn. This is just one leg, and I only decided to use the lower leg portion from the Call of Duty Spawn for this, instead of just switching the entire leg. So yeah, all in all, I really like how this custom turned out. Um, as with every custom, you saw, some paint chipping and all of that. That just comes with the territory. Sometimes things don't work out as perfectly as you want. For the most part, like I said, the paint is sticking to where it's supposed to. But I just want to add and say that probably the reason why Todd hasn't released a version of classic OG Spawn in his current iteration of the toy line is, I think he really wants that Kickstarter to be that remain special, you know as the only way that you could have gotten an OG version of Spawn, you know but that being said, it has been 5 years since that Kickstarter. So I think it's time for Todd to release an OG Spawn. You know, I think most fans that for those that didn't get the Kickstarter or were not happy with the Kickstarter, because that Kickstarter Spawn has like a pre-molded shaped torso where it has like a curve to it, so it's like pre-posed. And I think a lot of fans would rather have something like this, in the current line, where you would be able to, you have a swappable head, a torso that you can twist and turn and all of that. So even so, yeah, I think it's time. I think it's time for Todd to finally release a vintage Spawn. Even if he releases it like a deluxe figure, with a bunch of extras and charges, I don't know, $49 or whatever, I think fans would be happy with that, as long as the Spawn turns out, to be, you know, it may not be like exactly like even the Kickstarter Spawn wasn't true to like the first issue release of Spawn, because in case you don't know or forget, the pouch belt was originally on this leg, and I contemplated removing this pouch belt, thigh belt, and putting it on this side, and then filling in the thigh on this side. But I thought, that's fine. I guess I didn't just want to do the extra work in sculpting in, that area of the thigh, right? So I left it at that. But for the most part, the way the costume turned out is, like 95% of the original look. And yeah, so like I said, I'm pretty satisfied with how this turned out. And even if even if Todd does release a Spawn in the original costume, I'll probably get it, because I think it's gonna be, obviously I'm gonna be able to mess with it a little more without fear of having some paint chip off or whatever. So, but yeah, but in the meantime, this is gonna be my my version of the OG Spawn, and yeah. So until then, let's see what Todd brings in the future. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.